Unbreak this breakup. I didn't say sorry. Was away from my first husband 25 years.
I'm more aware than I've ever been in my life of what I've got, and I don't want to lose it again.
What if the woman everyone blamed for breaking a superstar's heart was actually trying to save his life? What if ending a relationship in one desperate phone call was the most loving thing she could do? Marie Osmond has spent decades smiling through the spotlight, but one name she rarely spoke about still lingers: Andy Gibb. A golden-voiced star who had the world at his feet, yet couldn't hold it together. Now, at 66, Marie is opening up about what really happened, and why the truth isn't what the headlines claimed. Stay right here, because this story is nothing like what the headlines told you. Two worlds, one stage. To understand why Marie Osmond and Andy Gibb even ended up in the same orbit, you have to understand what the late 1970s looked like in American entertainment. It was sequins and disco balls and wall-to-wall variety shows. It was the era of impossible, overnight fame, where a teenager could become a global superstar before they even knew who they were as a person. And that combination, fame without foundation, was a recipe for disaster that nobody was talking about yet. Marie Osmond was already royalty. The only girl in the legendary Osmond family, she had grown up on stage, performing alongside her brothers since she was practically in diapers. By the time she was a teenager, she had scored a massive country hit with Paper Roses. And then, alongside her brother Donnie, she became one half of one of the most watched variety shows on American television. Donnie and Marie was must-see TV. It was wholesome, it was fun, it was a family you wanted to be part of. And Marie was the heart of it, warm, talented, sharp-witted, and deeply rooted in her Mormon faith. She didn't drink, she didn't party. She was exactly what America wanted her to be. And then there was Andy Gibb. Born March 5, 1958, in Manchester, England, Andy was the baby of the Gibb family, too young to tour with his brothers Barry, Robin, and Maurice, but carrying the same extraordinary gift in his voice. He grew up watching the Bee Gees conquer the world while he waited in the wings. And in 1977, when he was just 18, he stepped into the spotlight of his own. Working with his brother Barry in Miami, Andy recorded his debut album, Flowing Rivers. What happened next was historic. His very first single, I Just Want to Be Your Everything, went straight to #1 on the Billboard Hot 100. Then his second single hit #1, then his third. Andy Gibb became the first solo artist in the history of American music to have his first 3 consecutive singles all reach the top of the charts. 3 for 3, right out of the gate. He was 19 years old, and the world was at his feet. By 1978, Andy Gibb was everywhere. Multi-platinum albums, magazine covers, screaming fans in every city. And that year, he was invited to appear on one of the hottest shows on television, Donnie and Marie. That's where it all began. But when these two completely different worlds finally collided on one stage, what exactly happened between Marie Osmond and Andy Gibb that nobody expected? The Spark, Season 4, Episode 4 of Donnie and Marie. October 20th, 1978. Andy Gibb walked onto that stage, and something happened. They performed Sometimes When We Touch Together, a slow, intimate ballad, and if you watch that footage today, you can see it. The chemistry was undeniable. The way the harmonies locked in. The way they looked at each other between verses. This wasn't just two professionals doing their jobs. There was something real moving beneath the surface. Now, on paper, these two made absolutely no sense. Andy Gibb was the exuberant disco prince, fresh off a historic hit streak, running with the fast crowd of Hollywood in its most decadent era. Marie Osmond was the girl next door, a woman of deep faith who, by her own account, lived a completely clean lifestyle. Record producer Albhi Galutin, who worked closely with Andy during this period, described the gap perfectly. Andy was deep in substance use while Marie lived on the opposite end of the spectrum entirely. Two completely different worlds. But here's the thing about opposites. Sometimes the very distance between two people is what makes the attraction so magnetic. They had known each other for a couple of years before things became romantic. And when they did, it was intense. It was real. The connection was genuine, and for a brief, fragile window of time, it seemed like maybe, just maybe, it could hold. It couldn't. So if the connection between them was real, what went so wrong that it all came crashing down in a single phone call? The phone call. Marie Osmond is not the kind of woman who puts her heartbreaks on display. She is private. She is measured. She guards the tender parts of herself with care. So when she opened up on The Talk in October 2019, the audience went completely still. Because what she described was a moment that clearly still lived inside her, even 4 decades later. She told the panel they had been dating when one night, everything unraveled. Andy began calling her, over and over, call after call, and it was obvious, painfully, unmistakably obvious, that he was not in a good place. He was using, he was lost, and he kept calling. Marie made a decision. She told him it was over, right there, on the phone, in that moment. "I could have probably done it better," she admitted, her voice carrying the weight of all those years. "But I just said, we're done." We hung up, and I felt really bad, because it was something I probably wanted to do in person. But it was just enough. It was breaking my heart seeing what he was doing to himself. Breaking her heart. She didn't walk away because she didn't care. She walked away because she cared more than she could bear. She was watching someone she had genuine feelings for spiral deeper and deeper into something she had no power to stop. And so she did the hardest thing. She stepped back. She drew a line. She said, "Not one more phone call, not one more night of this." She let him go. But here's where the story takes a turn that very few people know about. Because after that call ended everything, how far did things actually spiral for Andy Gibb behind the scenes? The fallout. Ending the relationship didn't end Andy's fixation on it. According to the 2024 biography, The Story of the Bee Gees, Children of the World by author Bob Stanley, things escalated well beyond phone calls. The Osmond family was reportedly so alarmed by Andy's repeated attempts to reach Marie that they turned him away at the door and took steps to limit contact with her entirely. That tells you everything you need to know about how far gone things had become. Andy Gibb, the man who had everything, was falling apart in real time, and the people around Marie were doing everything in their power to protect her from watching it happen up close. For Andy, this was a crash landing. Rock bottom, or at least the beginning of it. And sometimes rock bottom is exactly what a person needs. Because some say that the breakup became a turning point for him, that losing Marie made him see, perhaps for the first time in a long time, where his life was heading. A moment of clarity. A reason to stop. A reason to look at himself honestly. Marie Osmond didn't destroy Andy Gibb. She may have been the only person in his life who refused to let him keep destroying himself in front of her. A really good thing. So if that breakup became a turning point for him, what kind of life did Andy Gibb try to build after Marie walked away? The life he built after her. After Marie, Andy did begin to pull himself together, at least for a while. He went on to co-host the popular TV show Solid Gold and remained a recognizable face in entertainment. And in 1981, he met someone new. Victoria Principal, star of the mega-hit series Dallas, one of the most glamorous women in Hollywood, fell for Andy Gibb. They met on The John Davidson Show in 1981, and the chemistry between them was electric. They became one of the most talked-about couples in entertainment. A genuine golden pair. But the same demons followed Andy into that relationship. His substance use had not gone away. It had deepened, taken hold in ways that were becoming impossible to hide. Victoria Principal loved him fiercely, but she was also watching him disappear in slow motion. They separated in 1983, and that loss broke Andy in ways he never recovered from. He's been quoted saying that losing Victoria was what truly destroyed him. By the mid-1980s, the hits had dried up. The bookings slowed. The face that had been on every magazine cover was now a cautionary tale in hushed conversations. Andy attempted a Broadway debut in Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, but his addiction made him unreliable, and he was eventually dismissed from the production. He tried rehab. He relapsed. He tried again. In 1987, he checked himself into the Betty Ford Center. He came out talking about hope, about starting over, about getting back to music. He was 29 years old, and people who knew him said he finally seemed like he might make it. He didn't. But even after everything he went through, how did it all lead to the moment that would end his life at just 30 years old? March 10th, 1988. On March 5th, 1988, Andy Gibb turned 30 years old. 5 days later, he was admitted to the John Radcliffe Hospital in Oxford, England, complaining of chest pains. The doctors discovered he had myocarditis, inflammation of the heart muscle, almost certainly caused by years of substance abuse. His heart had been quietly, steadily, silently damaged. On March 10th, 1988, just 5 days after his 30th birthday, Andy Gibb died. He was gone. The boy who had charted 3 consecutive number ones before he was 20. The golden voice. The youngest Gibb. Gone at 30, before he had a chance to become who he might have been. When the news broke, the entertainment world went into shock. His brothers were devastated. His fans were inconsolable. And somewhere, a woman who had once loved him heard the news and felt something she has never fully put into words. And after that devastating loss, what did Marie Osmond carry with her all these years about the man she once loved? Here's what makes Marie Osmond's story about Andy Gibb so different from the tabloid version. The tabloids said she broke his heart. The tabloids painted her as the woman who walked away. And yes, technically, both of those things are true. But what the tabloids missed was the why. Marie Osmond did not end that relationship out of coldness. She ended it out of something closer to survival, hers, and in a way, his. She has described watching him with heartbreak. She has talked about how much it hurt her to make that call. She has told this story not with bitterness or blame, but with the kind of quiet sadness that only comes from genuinely caring about someone you couldn't save. Those who knew their story paint a picture of 2 young people who were genuinely connected, but whose lives were moving in completely opposite directions. Marie was building something solid: family, faith, career, longevity. Andy was burning bright and fast, and the people who loved him most could see what the end looked like before it arrived. Marie saw it too. That's why she made the call she made. And the fact that Andy himself later told her it was a wake-up call, that it made him see where his life was heading, means that in some profound way she gave him a gift. Not the gift either of them would have chosen, but a real one. She has spoken about him over the years with warmth and sadness in equal measure. She's described him as more than just a headline, more than a cautionary tale. He was a person she knew, a person she cared about, a person whose hidden sadness she understood. The pressure of being a Gibb without being a BG, the weight of impossible expectations, the way fame without roots can hollow a person out entirely. She saw all of that. She grieved it then, and she still does now. So while Andy Gibb's story ended in tragedy, what kind of life did Marie Osmond go on to build after it was all over? While Andy Gibb was fighting his demons through the 1980s, Marie Osmond was building the life she had always wanted. She married her college sweetheart, Steve Craig, in 1982. They had a son together and then divorced in 1985. She later married Brian Blosil in 1986, and together they built a large family. raising 8 children, including several who were adopted. Her life was not without devastating pain. In 2010, she faced one of the most unimaginable losses a parent can experience when her son Michael, who had struggled with depression, passed away after a long mental health battle at just 18 years old. The strength it took for Marie to stand back up in public after that, to keep performing, to keep showing up, is something that cannot be overstated. She and Brian Blosil divorced in 2007. And then, in 2011, she did something that surprised everyone. She remarried Steve Craig, her first husband, in a ceremony in Las Vegas. They have been together ever since. Marie Osmond built a life of extraordinary endurance. At 66, she is still performing, still sharp, still warm, still standing. She has outlasted trends, tragedies, and tabloids alike. Andy Gibb didn't get the chance to build that kind of life. And that's the quiet heartbreak at the center of all of this. And now, decades later, what is the truth Marie Osmond is finally ready to share about what really happened between them? The truth she's finally telling. So what is the truth Marie Osmond is finally telling at 66? Here's what's worth understanding. The deepest truths about their relationship were never locked away in some secret vault, waiting to be cracked open. They've been there all along, in interviews she gave carefully, in words she chose deliberately, in the story she told on The Talk in 2019 that most people skimmed past because the simpler version was easier to share. The simple version says, Marie Osmond broke Andy Gibb's heart, and he never recovered. The true version is harder, more human, more real. The true version says, Marie Osmond loved Andy Gibb enough to refuse to watch him destroy himself in front of her. She made a painful decision, imperfectly, over the phone, in the middle of the chaos, because she didn't know what else to do. She was young, she was scared, and she was watching someone she cared about turn into someone she no longer recognized. And then, years later, she got to hear from Andy himself that it mattered, that it changed something in him, that the worst moment of their relationship had somehow planted a seed of clarity. He still died. The seed wasn't enough. The addiction had already done too much damage by then, but he knew. He told her. And she carries that. That is the truth Marie Osmond is finally telling. Not a scandal, not a secret. A story about 2 young people caught in an impossible situation. About love that couldn't save someone, but maybe, just maybe, gave him one clear moment before the end. So after everything you've just heard, was Marie Osmond really the villain of this story, or something completely different? Andy Gibb would have been 68 years old this year. Think about that. 68. He could have had a second act, a comeback, a catalog of later work that deepened and mellowed with age, the way the best artists do. He could have been the elder statesman of pop, the one with all the stories, the one who made it through. Instead, he is frozen at 30, golden-voiced and forever young, the way tragedy preserves people. And Marie Osmond is 66, still going, still carrying the pieces of a story that most people got wrong for 40 years. She didn't break Andy Gibb. She tried to shake him awake. And for a moment, it worked. And then the world moved on, and the addiction won, and a heart gave out that had been under siege for far too long. That's the truth, not the headline, not the click. The actual, complicated, heartbreaking truth. If this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe, because we tell these stories the way they deserve to be told. Drop a comment below. Did you know the real story of Marie and Andy? What do you think of her now? I'll see you in the next one.